Hello everyone, welcome back to Clinical Psychology Community UK. It's Monday, which means it's another video time. Today we're going to be looking at 5 top tips for reflective practice. My name is Holly. I am currently an NHS assistant psychologist, and welcome back. Don't forget you can follow us on all of the social medias. We're on Instagram and we're on Facebook as well. Let's get started then with our lovely mountainous reflective picture there. Let's get started. So today we are going to be looking at what is reflective practice? Why should I be reflective? And then we're going to look at what the 5 top tips are for being reflective. And then some helpful resources for you as well. Okay, what is reflective practice? Now, I have done a full video on this, which I will link down below in the comments, reflective practice in clinical psychology. So if you want a full, I think it was about an hour-long webinar, recording it on that, then it is available on the channel. So, what is reflective practice? Well, essentially, it's a fancy way of saying we're going to think about the experience or the situation that we've just had, or a previous situation in your past. You're just thinking about that situation, usually in a structured way, but we'll come to that. Here's a long explanation. It's a quote from Bolton. So, reflective practice is paying critical attention to the practical values and theories which inform everyday actions by examining practice. This leads to developmental insight. So, super wordy, super broad. Let's break it down. Paying critical attention. So that means focusing on things critically, not necessarily in a critical way, as in this was bad, this was terrible, awful, being that like critical of things, critical in the academic sense. So being able to critique something, that's kind of what it means. So focusing critically or in a critiquing way to the practical values and theories which inform everyday actions. So thinking about the things that we do in our practice, an assessment with a client, working with a client, working in a multidisciplinary team, trying to apply psychology to practical situations. That's basically what we're doing. We're reviewing it like that. And by examining practice, so by examining what are the things that we do. And this leads to developmental insight. So the whole idea is that we will develop and we will learn from the situations that we've had, and we will become better practitioners. That's kind of the idea behind it. And as such, it is a core competency of being a clinical psychologist, looking at both the BPS and HCPC guidelines. And I think that is because, as a clinical psychologist, hopefully we will train, if we ever get on to training, we will be able to train to be reflective scientists, practitioners, and therefore being reflective is a really key part of that. And having self-awareness as a psychologist and as a therapist is really important. So developing these reflective practice skills will help develop you as a person, develop you as a clinician, as a therapist, as a practitioner. And hopefully you will be able to get onto training once you've learned some of this reflective practice stuff. But why should I be reflective? Why should I? I'm just channeling my inner teenager there. Why should I do it? Well, as I've said, it's a core competency of being a clinical psychologist. So it's super important to be able to do the job of a clinical psychologist effectively. It's helpful for interviews, all right? And I'm not just talking about doctorate interviews or assistant psych interviews, talking about any interview that you ever do. It's really helpful to be reflective and spend some time reflecting beforehand, because quite often they will ask you questions that are based on, give me an example of a time when something went wrong for you, and what did you learn about yourself? Well, if you're not able to be reflective, you're not going to be able to answer that question very well. So it's really helpful for interviews to be reflective. And like I've said, it helps for personal and professional development. Being reflective and thinking about things in different ways is a helpful skill. And we have a responsibility as psychologists at whatever career stage. For example, me, pre-qualified, hopefully going to be in training this year, fingers crossed, but pre-qualified at this stage and pre-training. I have a responsibility to be aware of social injustice, power, our position within that, and reflection can help us be more self-aware. That will run throughout our careers, in, as we get to positions with more power. So for example, leading services or being a consultant, we will have much more power than we have now, and we need to be able to be aware of that power, the impact it has on us, and what we can actually do with that power. I say power because it kind of, I feel like clinical psychologists are not Power Rangers, basically. But we do have power, and we need to think about how we're using it. So let's move on to the top tips. Number 1, find your way. Okay, I am not going to sit here and prescribe to you how to be reflective in the sense that you need to do this, this, and this. I can give you a range of options to be reflective and a range of things that have worked for me. And I absolutely encourage you to be active in it and try some of these things out. So, for example, you just need to find your technique. Okay, starting off, I used to do journaling a lot. I do it in my personal life because I kind of find that automatic writing quite soothing and cathartic and helpful. So I've always been a bit of a journaler, so that can be helpful as well. So you could keep a journal as whatever job role you're in, a journal based on experiences that you have, not necessarily based on any models. You could keep a reflective portfolio. If you've ever watched any of my videos and you know how massive I am on a reflective portfolio, I think it's a fantastic resource. And that's something that my journaling has developed into me having a reflective portfolio now. And I find it really, really helpful. So that's just a place where I can, collect all of my reflections and think about things. I have also done a video on reflective portfolios as well, which I will link below. You can just spend some time thinking. Reflection doesn't have to be formal and writing it down. And that's one of the things I've learned. So I became an assistant 1 year ago, and I didn't do any reflection really. I thought I did, but I actually wasn't really doing anything. So when I first started using reflective models and reflecting on things, I would write it down because that's just who I am as a person. I like writing. But actually now I've developed into, I kind of intrinsically know some of the reflective models and the questions to be asking myself. So sometimes I'll just allow myself 5 to 10 minutes to just think through the situation. So just spending some time thinking is okay, and it's useful. Allow yourself that time. You could chat to friends or your family or your partner or anybody. That's another massively helpful thing. It doesn't, as I say, it doesn't always have to be sitting and doing a reflection. It can just be, having a debrief with some of your friends about some stuff that's happened. You can also there are tools like supervision logs, project logs, CPD logs. So what I mean by this is it's a different sheet that you can write down the conversation that you had in supervision, any reflections that you've got. For the projects one, you'd be listing all the things that you're working on, how it's making, any reflection that you've got on that, or any feedback that you've had, just thinking about that sort of stuff. And a CPD log, so if you do any webinars or you do any training programs or anything, write down what you covered and how it's applicable to your practice. Those are just some helpful ways to start thinking about being reflective. But try some of these stuff, try some of it out. Try some of the reflective models out. I've done loads of videos on reflective models that will be linked down below as well. So just have a go, see what works for you, because what works for you might not be what works for me. So just try them. That's my advice. Tip number 2 is to be honest. I know this is kind of fairly obvious, but you're not going to learn as much if you're not being truly honest with yourself as if you are being honest with yourself. So just be as honest as possible. Remember that no one else is going to see your reflections if you don't want, no one else is going to be able to look at them if you don't want them to. Nobody else is going to be able to read your thoughts if you're doing it via thinking, unless you choose to share them, like in supervision, for example. But you will learn more if you're honest with yourself. And as part of that, reflect non-judgmentally. And I think when I've had difficulty in being honest with myself, it's because I'm putting a judgment there. So I was reflecting last week on, I used to work in substance misuse, as some of you might know. And in that demographic, highly stigmatized, highly distrustful of services, when they would ask for help to fill in, for example, I got asked on multiple occasions to provide a supporting letter for benefits. I did not do that because it was company policy. And when I reflect on that, I think, oh yeah, but it was all the company policy. It was nothing to do with my decision. Well, actually, it was like I wasn't allowing myself to be completely honest. And actually, yeah, we can challenge these policies that are around. And I just didn't feel confident enough at that time. And it's okay. So reflecting non-judgmentally, and just being honest, you will definitely get the most out of it. And if you struggle with that, if you do notice that something, your reflections are a bit sticky, they don't make sense, or you can't quite be honest, that's an interesting reflection in itself. So in my example, when I was thinking that the reason I didn't think it was anything to do with my fault is because I could not take responsibility. I didn't feel I could take responsibility for that. And I felt bad that I wasn't providing these supporting statements for these people. And that's actually why. So, but, it was an interesting reflection in itself. So that is my tip number 2. Be honest with yourself. You will get so much further if you're able to just be honest with yourself. I promise. Number 3, use reflective models. That's definitely something I would recommend. That is why this whole channel started. I wanted to help people understand what reflective models are, because I interviewed for the doctorate this year, and part of the feedback was I need to start using reflective models to be more reflective. And hopefully when I next come to interview, I will have a deeper understanding of some of the things that I've experienced. But when I looked into this, I actually couldn't find that much information. And I thought, creating webinars and videos would be really helpful for people, because that's kind of what would be helpful for me. So have a look at some of the other videos. But reflective models are essentially, they provide frameworks with prompts to help you examine a situation in detail. All right. So for example, the Driscoll model, 2007, that's one of the earlier models that I covered. I think it's my second video, actually. I'll link it below. That broadly covers 3 questions, very broadly. It does have other bits, but it broadly covers what, so what happened, so what did it mean, now what are you going to do with it? So it created that framework for you to try and think about those things and answer those questions. They often encourage you to include psychological theory as well, which can be really helpful. For example, I have started trying to bring in psychological theory to models and my reflections, even when it doesn't prompt it, because I found that really helpful for the whole applying theory to practice. That's always been a bit of a barrier for me. I've never really understood how to do that until I started doing it. So, for example, this helped me in a real life situation. I had an interview for an assistant psychologist job, and they asked me, which psychological model would you use to explain why you're sat here today in interview? And I was like, panic. But I'd actually really recently got into learning about compassion focused therapy. Again, I've done a video for that. Compassion focused therapy. So I used that model to explain it, because I'd also done a reflection on CFT and how it might apply to me. So it can be really helpful to include psychological theory. It will help you get a better understanding of the theory and apply it to different situations. So give it a go. It will also help you learn from your experiences and quite often implement a plan for future situations. So reflective models, in their structured approach, quite often end with a sort of plan or what next sort of situation, which is always helpful for me because it sort of soothes my anxiety to have that. So, but tip number 3 is use reflective models. Definitely do that. Tip number 4, as I've sort of covered in tip number 3, but I wanted to make it its own point because I do think it's a really top tip for reflective practice for all of the reasons I've said. So some models will not prompt you to do this, and some will. So choose your right one. But there's no harm in adding psychological theory if you want to any model, or any reflection or any journal entry. It's always helpful. Do any models fit with your experiences? Or are there any, models that help you explain your experiences? Or are there any that you've started learning about that actually might be able to help you make sense of some of the things that you've been through personally and professionally? Would a formulation help you to better understand your experiences? So for some things that I've experienced, I've done like a self-formulation, if you like, with lots of different approaches. And that's kind of helped me gain some formulation skills and also some reflective skills. So maybe spend some time thinking about that. I've also done a video on psychological formulation as well. It's on the channel. So linking to psychological theory, it will help you by, practicing linking theory and practice. That is what it will help you do. So when that question comes up in interview, you will be able to have something that will help. And it will help you better reflect in applications and interviews. Yeah, as I've said. Tip number 5 is my favorite tip, probably. Protect your well-being. As I've said in previous videos, it's really easy as an aspiring psychologist, an aspiring clinical psychologist particularly, I think. It's really easy to just put the blinkers on and ignore everything that isn't psychology and just try and, get reflection from every single experience that you have. It's just not realistic. Like, you will never be able to switch off and relax if you're constantly looking for ways to reflect. And that is the pitfall that I sort of fell into when I first started reflecting and using reflective portfolios. I thought, wow, this is great. I'm developing so much. So let me write everything down. Let me reflect on absolutely everything that happens to me. Not realistic, not helpful. So it's okay to take time away. You don't always need to be reflecting. You don't always need to be doing it. You can, if you want, write a list for future reflections. That's what I've got. If there's anything that pops into my mind, when I'm on a walk or on my weekends even, like I try to have a really clear distinction between work and my home life, particularly when we're working from home. So I like to have a list of future reflections so I can pop it on the list and I can remember that I can come back to that when I've got time to do it. And that helps me sort of compartmentalize it. But as well as that, look after the basics, particularly in COVID times and working from home and managing that. It's hard. Start by making sure that you're getting enough sleep if possible. You're eating right. You're looking after yourself. You're going out for walks. You're doing your exercise. That is the basics. Thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we don't have the basics covered, you are not going to be able to go up to the sort of psychological needs and the reflective stuff. You're not going to be able to do that. So make sure you look after the basics. I know it sounds obvious. We're all educated people. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes we just discount our basic needs because it's easier. So just watch for that. Do things you enjoy as much as you can. I mean, currently it's February 2021 as we're recording this, and it's difficult because lockdown is happening everywhere. So doing the things you enjoy. So, for example, I love going out for meals with my fiance. Can't do that at the moment. So we're just trying to do date nights in the house. Do things that you enjoy doing to not just, it's not just about protecting against the negative sides of well-being. It's about promoting your well-being as well and doing the things that you like to do. And also, I would encourage you to reflect on your well-being periodically. Don't stress out too much about it. Just check in with yourself, maybe at the beginning of every month or the end of every month. Just check in with yourself, see how you're doing. Do you need to make any adjustments? Like I did when I was reflecting too much. I checked in with myself and I was like, you are reflecting too much. You cannot do this. Move on. And then I implemented a plan. So those are our 5 top tips for today. Some of the helpful resources, I've got some reflective account templates. They're all available on the Facebook group. Okay, so if you're not part of the UK Declan Site Applicants Reflective Space Facebook group, the link is below. Click, add, you can join. It's absolutely fine. They are all the templates that I discuss will be available there. And as I've mentioned throughout this video, other videos are available on our YouTube channel. We've got reflective practice in clinical psychology, reflective portfolios, reflective models. We've got loads and loads and loads. Reflective exercises. Thank you so much for watching. And if anyone has counted how many times I've said the word reflective or reflection throughout this video, I would be very interested to hear what you say in the comments. I will link some videos down below. Make sure you're subscribed and then you'll get the updates for every new video, one new video every single week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.